Today we're going to be blending some aIRs, and these are some new aIRs I just made hot off the press in Audio Assault's aIR, which is a great tool for blending and creating new impulses, whether they're from other people's impulses or your own. Let's check out aIR and let's make some blended aIRs for release on my Discord. You can go download them for free. By the time this video is out, they will be out too. So enjoy. So here we have the aIR loader. It's very blank and empty right now. We'll fix that. I've got Shibalba as my amp sim. This is a new one from Audio Assault, and you should check that out too. You know, they keep putting out fire products. I'm going to keep shouting them out. Not sponsored in any way, but their stuff is cheap enough that I can buy it all and not worry about it. Really good team. Anyways, this is aIR, and I'm going to go on over to these new impulses I made. I've already got the single impulses from the mic, and I did capture this mic. This is my newly modified 990 with a K47 capsule in it. I hope you think it sounds good. You can hear it right now. I think it sounds pretty cool. It's a little different from the Stellar X2 I've been talking about and using recently too, which is brighter. This one's a little darker, so I figured I'd give it a go in this video, and here are some impulses I made with it on my Vintage 30, well, my bandmates, Vintage 30 412 over there. So, all right, what do? I've got my aIRs. These are all single ones. We just drag and drop for one. That's really easy. So let's do that. As I said, the 990 is a little darker here. So I'm going to take the brightest one I have right in the center of the dust cap, and let's take the cap edge from the X2. We've got two large diaphragm condensers here. Not the usual choice. Normally I like to go with just a regular SM57, but here we have something different, and I think they sound pretty cool. Now, the mix knob here allows us to blend them. By default, it is at 50%, and they'll both be playing at 50%. There is no universal knob to blend between them. That would be kind of cool, but we're just going to have to pick percentages, and if one of them is at 100%, it's going to be 100%. I think that'll override everything else. So I'm not sure. Like if I have two at 100%, don't worry about that. Don't do that. Over in the modules section, we have a whole bunch of different tools here, and the main one I like to use down here is the normalizer. This just makes it so that our aIR, no matter how we have these set up volume-wise, we're getting the same volume. So it's always normalized at the end. I also really like the visualizer, and that shows us the general EQ shape. We've got the impulse and frequency map here. So those are really useful. We also have low shelf and high shelf. Cab focus, I'm not sure exactly what that does. I don't usually use that. The phase delay is not really necessary on most of these because we have a delay right here, which can be useful if your IRs are out of phase. Since I made these, I know that they're in phase, so no worries. So that's about it. The IR module, you don't necessarily need to use on its own because if you drag and drop any IRs, they'll come right up there. You can also rearrange the order of any of these things, but they will be affected like any effects chain. So I want to keep the normalize at the end, and then we'll have our visualizer after that. So that's the setup. That's the setup for this one. That's really all you need to know. It's a very simple plugin. When we blend IRs, we want to think about them like blending fine wines. We have different flavors, different aromas and textures, and stanky qualities. And we want to find the right qualities to fit the puzzle together to get an IR that's well-rounded, perhaps, or perhaps not well-rounded. But in general, something that's usable. You know, if we have one IR that we really like the general tone of, but it needs more beef, we can beef it up with another beefier IR, or brighten up a darker IR. And we want to be listening to IRs, thinking about what we want to add to them. Or you could just, go at it and just have fun. Let's check out a few of my IRs here so you have a sense of what they sound like and the kind of tools we're going to use to blend. Here's the dust cap of the 990. So I think that already sounds pretty killer, and it's thanks to this cool K47 capsule, which as far as the large diaphragm capsule goes, it's probably the closest to the sound of an SM57. A condenser in a way is more detailed, but that's not always a good thing. I mean, it's not always a better thing. I'll just go through all these real quick so you get the sense of how they sound. And as I go past, 2 or 3, they get perhaps a bit unusably dark, but I just wanted to capture the full range of the speaker. Yeah, so they get very dark and very bass heavy, and it may be useful for blending. I'm not sure that I'll even need that, but I have them there, so they could be useful for that. And sometimes there might be a certain resonance in the bass that you want to use to beef something up. Again, this whole process of blending IRs, we want to think about what each IR is bringing to the table and what it's lacking and what it could use to improve it. And my philosophy on this is to go as raw and as little processing as possible. My experience with these condensers before is that they tend to be more boomy and big in the bass than something like a 57. So we may want to do some low cuts. Let's just see if we can get a nice blend of both these mics at the center position. And I'll tell you that the 990 is a little darker than the X2. So if it's too bright, we'll probably want to turn down the X2 more. Let's play both on their own first, and then we'll see how they sound together. So here's the 990 at the dust cap on its own. I think that already sounds pretty nice. There's no weird quality in the mids that is jumping out to me as something I don't like. So that one's pretty good on its own. Well, let's see how the X2 on the dust cap fares. So definitely it's brighter. And I would say I don't like some of that high-end noise. So I'm going to want to darken that one up if I use it. So let's put them both on 50/50 and see how that sounds. Yeah, so it's still got this high-end air that it's a sizzle. It's a little harsh, a little annoying. I could tame it with a high-pass filter, but rather than doing that, let's just swap it out. I don't think that the 990 on its own was too dark, but I do like something about the combination. Let's go over to the X2 number 2 at the cap edge, the edge of the dust cap. So this is a good spot to capture. It sounds good, though I think it's losing a little bit of definition. So I'm going to dial this one back. Let's try it at 25%. This is at 50%. See how that goes. Is it a big difference over the 990 on its own? I can see that when I turn this one on, it is taming some of those ultra lows, but I'm thinking that this is a little too bassy too. So one of the few EQ things I like to do is this low shelf. So you can really see how just that little amount of low end is really tightening up a lot. Now at 200 we are losing a little bit of that resonant chunk, and for the purposes of making an aIR that is useful in a lot of scenarios, I'm not going to want to go up quite that high, but even around 150 we're not really losing much. We're gaining a fair bit in terms of clarity from this. And to me, I mean, I'm just listening on these headphones, that already sounds like a pretty mix-ready tone, but I'm going to dial it back just a little bit because you can always shave off some of that low end yourself too. But for shelving, it is kind of nice to have it done. Usually, if I can, I like to just low pass and high pass with a finished aIR, unless I really need to grab another EQ. But my idea is to get as much done with the aIR as possible and save any EQ tweaking in the mix for minimal broad strokes. So one other little thing is, do we have low pass, high pass? Yeah, this is another good thing to have. I do like the low shelf if we're dealing with too much bass in general, but this can be nice just as a finishing touch here. Getting a little sizzle in the top that I just don't like, and I don't see why I would ever really need that in a mix. So why not shave some off while we're at it? Yeah, so that just cleans it up just a touch. We're not trying to change the brightness so much, just get rid of a little bit of that hissy stuff. So I'm going to call that good for this one. And then let's make another one. We're going to go to export aIR. I'm going to export mono, always 24-bit, 44.1, appropriate folder, blends, and just going to call this solid. You know why? Because it's solid, you know? I don't have really anything else too much to say about it, but it's solid. So, same thing. I'm going to export a 48. Should probably say it right, but. So now we've got this, and let's just go ahead, double click these. We're going to scrap everything but the normalize, and let's pick something different. I'm going to use the same aIR set, but let's go for something really kind of dark. And the distance, by the way, are about 6 inches off. Phase shouldn't be an issue, but let's do the 990 distance. Let's see how that sounds. So it doesn't sound bad. It's not super far away, but it's definitely kind of lacking that close mic aggression. But maybe we'll be able to bring that in. Yeah, so I don't think it's adding anything good. It seems like it's kind of just muddying it up a bit. We can further refine this blend a little bit and see if this is exactly where we want. I have them both about 50-50. They're a little under, but they're pretty equal to each other. So let me just play around with that mix and see if that's the final blend we want. So I turned down the darker one a little bit. That seems to improve the highs, improve the clarity, and the overall, not just make it brighter, but make it sound more the way I want it to. So I want to play with this focus knob, and let's see if it will shape this into something even meaner. So that's sounding pretty darn nice to me. And, you know, making the wrong choice in any of these areas can be the difference between a really great sounding aIR and something that is not so great. I haven't done any tweaking to the amp, by the way. I'm leaving this completely stock. I want to get as much goodness out of the aIR as possible, and then, you know, if I want to tweak the amp settings a little bit, I can. But I don't want to have to, you know, cut a ton of lows off the amp, or boost a ton of highs, or, you know, cut a ton of mids, try to do some, you know, parametric EQ in there, if I don't have to. If I can get it to sound great with the amp, I have the gain set how I like it, and I do run the tube screamer just because I use it all the time, and I like how it sort of gives that upper mid boost, and I want to keep that in mind because that's going to be there. But I like to try to keep my EQ on my amp as mild as possible, and just do some subtle tweaking in the mix and try to get really everything from the aIR that I can. So this is pretty good. We're not using that, so I'll delete it. I do like this focus. It's easy to go overboard, but at this point, at about 25%, I feel like it's definitely cleaning that up, and hopefully you could hear that. It sounds better with it on, and it doesn't sound like it's really losing anything important. It's kind of adding a little bit of color. It's making it pop just a little bit, adding some contrast, a little bit of mid-scoop basically, but in a way that I like, and I don't feel like we're really losing any crucial information. So once again, gonna export this 24-bit. I'm already in my 48 folder, so let's start with that. What are we gonna call this one? We're gonna call this X2 Mean Machine, because that's what it is. It's a little grindy. But it's not too bad. I feel like it's a good kind of good thrashy sort of thing. Maybe that's just because that's the riffs I'm playing. Whatever. Nobody cares what I name them. I care. Some people care. You care. I know you do. All right. So those are done. I'm going to just turn these off for now because they might be useful since we're dealing with the same aIRs. Actually, for another one, well, let's do one more. I want to get one more with the 990, and maybe let's get one that's all... What about... Are any of these good? Let me see. Maybe I can find something cool like I did last time. Yeah, so that's got a character I like. Haven't been a big fan of the cap edge, but maybe we'll give it another try here. Normally it's a position that I love, but in maybe just this aIR, I didn't shoot it as well as I could have. I don't know. Now I feel like the focus knob here is almost cheating. I'm not really happy with how that sounds without it, so let's go back to the center. I don't really like how the cap edge is playing with it so much. Okay, that's pretty cool. Once again, we're going to need that low shelf. And we can also try, these have individual high and low pass. So what if we do this sort of a gentle one, 40. This one should be darker. Let's bring that, well, do we want the beef from the darker one? I don't know. I think it'll have plenty of beef. Let's just see how that sounds. I like them being set the same, I think. So I'm gonna go to the low shelf here, and let's see how that sounds as it was. What I'm listening for when I'm dialing in this low shelf is where it is sort of cleaning up it's not just the general darkness, but I almost feel like the bass overpowers the rest of the signal, and it really sucks a lot of the clarity, and almost like hitting a compressor too hard. So, you know, where it's good to me, it's not sounding thin, but the bass is really balanced with everything else, because again, you could turn up the bass or the depth on your amp, but I want the bass to be balanced. It doesn't have to, you know, hit you in the face. You can do that yourself later, but it should be controlled, and it should be complementary. See, that's almost right, but if you can hear it's farting out a little bit. Let's try -6. That's about as much as I could get away with, but I want to cut it down just a little more. See, that's feeling tight. It's not sounding too farty, but I'm not really going so far as to cut more than I should, I think. And here's just my high pass filter. Let's start this at 16K. At 16K, it's pretty safe. You're really not cutting out any brightness, barely. You're really just sort of trimming off some of the fizz and stuff that you don't really want anyways. Let's go with that, 15.5K, and I'm pretty happy with that. That sounds pretty killer. But before we save it and move on, let's just see if our friend the focus knob makes this sound better. And I'm actually going to put it after the low cut, or after the low shelf. That sounds pretty good, but I think it's a little too much for this, so let's dial it back to 15%. I think that's adding just a little, or rather subtracting just a little bit in the right way, but not too much in this case. This is already pretty close to where I wanted it, so just a little final polish. And let's go ahead and save these, and then we'll do one more before I wrap up. So I'm going to call this 990 meaty. It's meaty. And then you ditch these. Actually, I do want to keep 991 center because I really like that one. And now I'm going to bring in something not from this pack. But another one I've done, I'm going to go for this Mesa Mark III cab because it's got some interesting character to it, and I want to see how it compares. This one is the Mark III cab. It's very open, like literally it's a 112, completely open back, partially open front. I mean, there's like barely any cabinet there. It's got a very mid-focus sound, and I capture it all with an SM57, which is also kind of mid-focused. And it's this black shadow speaker, which I haven't heard in any other enclosure, but in this case, it's very, very mid-focused, and so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna see how it works. Got all this stuff off. I'm gonna pull in. Just start with 57.1 and hear that on its own. I mean, it's a world of difference from what I've been working on. Let's go back to the 990. I mean, those two on its own, yeah, the 990 I think blows the other one away. But this has some cool qualities. It's got very aggressive mids, which might work just perfectly because the condenser tends to be rather too bassy. So maybe we'll be able to blend in something thinner, and maybe we won't even have to use this low shelf on it. I never use the low shelf on SM57 only blends, by the way. I never have to, so I wouldn't be opposed to it if I had to, but I don't. So let's start blending these. Let me go through and just check out some of these. Maybe like number 2 will be a little darker. I think that might be the best blend. So they're saying that like number 2 and 3 have this really obnoxious kind of resonance, but it's cool. And it's like, it's so spiky and focused that I think in a blend could be really good. Sometimes that's the kind of things I want to look for, because on its own, it's unusual, but I think it would be cool to blend that in. So let's start with our 990 as our baseline and blend in the 57. Even at that, it's already too obnoxious, I think. don't know if you're understanding what I'm hearing and thinking about as I do this, but I'm just listening for where that kind of annoying-ish resonance, that kind of nasally bark is picking up, where it's going. I find the 57.1 here, I think, is a little less, a little better suited. It seems to be the best blend, best match for this one, I think. And I've got it pretty low, but it's still like, if I push it up higher, it's really getting into a kind of obnoxious territory. So that's where I'm going to keep it. And let's turn on the low shelf, because it's still really dark, because again, it's mostly this 990, which has a ton of bass on it. That's hitting in the right places, I think. Not my favorite tone in the world, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's to me, it's got a little bit of a retro quality. Let's again just throw on the filter and see if the focus improves this as well. If I end up putting the focus on everything, I'm gonna feel like I didn't fully succeed. Or did I? Maybe I just learned something cool. Just slap it on there. Slap it everywhere. So I'm going to leave the focus off, okay? Because I want to go with I'm thinking about rawness and kind of edginess here. So let's leave it off. This, by the way, is the phase button. And I made all these, so they're all in phase. But nonetheless, it's interesting to see some of the effects you can get. And that's cool. So, you know, as much as 3.2%, you might be thinking that's hardly doing anything, but I can hear it, and it's definitely doing something, and that's as much as I really want to put into that, because you go too far, it's like super scooped and hollow sounding, but a little bit kind of gives it a pleasant scoop. And I've got the phase inverted too, so for whatever reason, that's working. So just try things. Listen. I think I've got a little too much bass here though, so let's turn that down a little bit. I don't know if this one needs the focus, but let's try to give it a little bit, just see. Because I've kind of got this far one acting in the same way. It's kind of giving it that mid-scoop kind of thing. All right. Yeah, that's what I've got going on here. The SM57, the 991 on 2 different speakers. And that sounds pretty killer. I mean, and these are not amazing aIRs. None of these are really like top quality individual aIRs. Well, the 991 with my custom modded capsules is pretty nice. I like how it's sounding, but normally I'm not a huge fan of condensers on this or metal tones, but I like how it worked out. I'm pretty happy with these. I think they sound pretty cool. And what do we call this one? What do we call it? Nemesis. I don't know why. Just name popped into my head. Let's go with it. I think, yeah. So this is 990 and 57. Nemesis. Don't ask. I don't know. I haven't been playing Resident Evil, but I've been playing Elden Ring. And that's what you need, is the Elden Ring. Maybe people will think it's a cool name. I hope so. Anyways, that's it for today's lesson class. How to make aIR blends. These aIRs should already be available, I guess. I don't know. I just made them today, so I haven't shot that video. But I assume they are. Check out my Discord. Download the aIRs there. They're all free. They're all super high quality. Get them while you can. They'll be up for forever, I suppose. But get them now. Download them now. Play them. Write some songs. Post the songs on my Discord. You know, use these excellent tones to craft your next masterpiece album and win yourself a Grammy and attribute it to me for helping you get that killer guitar tone. I hope that's my goal, you know, just help you get your next Grammy. Right? So, thanks. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.